All right, how's my hair looking? Yeah, good? All right. Depression. So I'm currently living my post-depression life. From this point forward, I'm never going to be depressed again. Why? Simple. I don't have permission to be depressed anymore. That's it. It just comes down to permission. I guess it's a form of self-discipline. But it wasn't always that way. For most of my life, I went through cycle after cycle of depression. From childhood, yes, believe it or not, from childhood all the way up until, I don't know, early 30s. So I want to talk about that experience and the different ways I've coped with depression, the different ways I've attempted to resolve depression, and finally, what worked for me. How was I finally able to live a post-depression life? As a child, I was just really sad. I grew up in a broken home. I don't want to say too much about that. Suffice it to say that I was a sad child, never did well with friends, kept to myself, bit of a loner, a lot of social anxiety. I might have mild autism, I don't know, but I didn't have a lot going for me. That was childhood. And then teenage years was basically the same, but now my friends were assholes. And my 20s were when I finally started to realize something needed to change. My mid-20s is, I think, when I started to go down the path of resolving this issue. And actually, that's not true. I started resolving it when I was 18, and I concluded in my early 30s. So let's talk about what I did in my childhood. It's simple. What do all kids do to cope with unpleasant feelings, unpleasant environments? You watch TV. You eat sugar cereals, you go outside and play. It's escapism, just escape. You don't have, drugs aren't a thing yet, so all you could do is run around and get high naturally on endorphins. Then my teenage years came, and then I discovered cannabis. I was like, oh, this is quite nice. This is quite nice. And then I discovered alcohol. That was also quite nice for like a year. Then alcohol got really boring really fast. To this day, I can't drink that stuff. And then something profound happened. I finally started to see the light from within the abyss. Purpose. I found purpose. I was 17 years old. I was in my senior English literature class in high school. And for reasons I won't go into here, I just became enamored with literature, poetry, wordplay, just language arts in general. I just became enamored with language arts, and I wanted to become a writer. So naturally, I had to go to college for that. Thank goodness, because I was not on a right track academically. So I get to college, and I have a smile on my face. I have purpose in my mind and my heart, and that's it. I just go to school, and I crush it, and that's it. I'm going to become a writer. I love literature. But then I hit an existential crisis, and about a year and a half in, I was sitting in my Victorian literature class, and I was just staring at my book of David Copperfield, written by, I forget who, Charles Dickens. And I realized this is actually no longer a fulfilling pursuit of my life. So I have a mini existential crisis. So I get lost in the library for like 3 months, kind of just wandering from book aisle to book aisle. And then I come across the astrophysics and cosmology section. And I start reading about cosmology, black energy, the Big Bang. I start reading about this arc, the story, because I'm still thinking about stories, right? English literature. The stories of all these scientists. Archimedes, Kepler, Galileo, Isaac Newton, Einstein, Alexander. I go to UC Berkeley, and very quickly I realized that at the community college level, I was a big fish in a small pond. But in Berkeley, I was a pretty average sized fish in the ocean, ladies and gentlemen, in the ocean. So I do some volunteering over the summer in a physics lab. I take my classes. I graduate, but I'm not going to become a theoretical physicist. And that also led to another existential crisis, right? Because I put my whole existential void onto my identity and my sense of purpose, which was literature. That collapsed. Then it was physics, and then that collapsed. And then at one point it became dancer. I'll become a dancer. Partly because I was cripplingly insecure about my intelligence. That was in the beginning. I'm pretty confident with who I am now. But yeah, a dancer. A dancer, that's what I'll be. And then several years later, the pandemic hits, foot surgery hits, all these knee injuries hit me. I have this just fall from grace, disillusionment. And without going into too much detail, that is like the worst, not like, that was the most depressive episode of my life. It lasted 2 years. 2 years. Have you ever been depressed for 2 years? That's fucking brutal. I mean, I guess I was depressed for like most of my teenage years, but not like this. Because, you know, when you're older, you have time to build yourself up. And the higher you go, the further you drop, right? I mean, I had these ideas about who I was, where I was going, and I just saw my future just evaporate in front of my eyes. I mean, I've never known despair and cynicism and pessimism and misanthropy and nihilism in a way that I knew it then. Now, before I go on, I want to talk about the ways I've coped and eventually overcame depression. So, childhood, escapism, you know, be a kid, playing around, candy, sugar. Teenager, drugs. In my 20s, I got lost in my intellectual pursuits. If I'm thinking about literature or if I'm thinking about physics, I don't have to think about the existential dread. But then once those sources of identity and therefore purpose came collapsing towards the ground, I was left with nothing. And I was right back where I started, the void. I started taking antidepressant medications, SSRIs, when I was about 24. Did that for a few years. I tried to get off of them. I couldn't. It was hard. Like, just my mood just crashed again. Those things are addictive. So then we tried upping the dose, my doctor and I. Then we tried a different SSRI. Then we graduated to SNRIs, and none of that helped. Come the pandemic, I'm boxed in, I'm alone, and I'm dealing with all this like existential dread and depression and identity crisis and just mental health like dwindling. I'm starting to feel like, you know, Tyler Durden is my best friend. I know enough at this point in my life to know that there is a cocktail, there is an antidepressive cocktail that works to an extent. So what is that antidepressive cocktail? Exercise. At that point, I mean, I was a dancer, a martial artist, a bodybuilder. Check. I got the exercise part down. It's not helping. Get at least 8 hours of sleep in. I'm getting 10. Check. It's not helping. Good diet, stay hydrated. Check. Not helping. Being an active participant in the local community. Not really. Like 2 years. Until I rejoined my martial arts gym, at which point that helped a bit. But it didn't make the problem go away. I started experimenting with psilocybin mushrooms because I read there's some published research showing that psilocybin mushrooms helps cure treatment-resistant depression. In other words, if you've had SSRIs and they didn't work, if you've had SNRIs and they didn't work, and that describes me, well, you might qualify for psilocybin mushrooms. Now, I didn't apply for any clinical trials. I live in Berkeley, you see. I can just drive down or Uber down to Oakland, go to the dispensary, it's decriminalized, and just buy some mushrooms. So I did that. I started experimenting with microdosing, and I'm really glad I did. Psilocybin mushrooms might be the most effective antidepressant drug I've ever taken in my life. Now, it's not something I take every single day. I exercise every day, part of a community. I have a sense of purpose. I have goals. I have structure in my day. These are the things that really sustain you throughout your life. But in that dark crisis of a part of my life that I was in, the mushrooms did help. They helped me kick my use of cannabis as a coping mechanism. They helped me pierce through the darkness and see the beauty around me. They helped me identify a sense of responsibility onto myself, my own health. Really, really helpful. And so I microdosed for about 3 months, and then that was it. That's it. No more drugs, no mushrooms, no cannabis. At that point, certainly no alcohol. I can't stress enough how much I don't like alcohol. And that's it. If you work a job that makes you feel like a fraud, if you have a career that you no longer want to be an active participant in, you should seriously reconsider that, because no amount of coping is going to change that. I don't want to get too much into the details of this part, but changing careers was also, I think, the last little drop of medicine in that antidepressive cocktail. Your job takes up so much of your time, so much of your life, decades of your life. If it's making you miserable, change. Sounds easier than it is. But if you're not going to take that risk on yourself, then, look at the alternative. My antidepressant cocktail that has rocketed me towards a life of post-depression is maintaining my physical and mental health. No more coping, no more recreational drugs, having structure in my day, plenty of exercise, having a sense of purpose. I cannot stress how important having a sense of purpose is. Environment is very important. I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl. I've read Man's Search for Meaning. He found sense of purpose and happiness in a Nazi extermination camp, which proves the point that even in the worst hells a human can create, in the worst hells that humanity can create for itself, the mind is a powerful thing. And amen. The mind is a powerful thing. But the environment also matters. It's not like what kept him going was the idea that one day he was going to escape Auschwitz, not that he was going to just live there until the day he died, right? So, let's not overlook the fact that environment matters. If you're in an environment that's not doing your mental health any favors, change the environment. Sometimes that environment is your career.